Welcome back to the Healthy and Whole podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about diabetes. And specifically, we're going to be covering the 4-step protocol that we've been using with clients for quite some time now that has been able to help many clients to sustainably lose weight and to, in many cases, reverse their A1c numbers and to recover their blood sugar regulation back into normal range from either full-blown type 2 diabetes range or from pre-diabetic range. And so we're actually about to, in the next week or so, release a free course called the A1c Recovery Course. And so in the comments section beneath this video on whatever platform I'm putting this out on, I will put a link down there so that if you want to sign up for the waitlist for that free course, you can. But I want to cover the overview of this protocol because this protocol is exactly what we're going to teach on in this course. And I think it's important that people understand how we're able to get the kind of results that we get when it comes to, with a lot of clients, getting full recovery from prediabetes and or type 2 diabetes. So I'm going to dive right in. And again, this is the 4-step A1c recovery protocol that we have used very successfully with many clients over the last few years. So number one is we're always going to start with education. And specifically, we're going to educate around helping them to understand what the actual problem is and how the problem came to be so that they can understand exactly what it's going to take in order to recover their blood sugar regulation, in order to be able to start losing weight sustainably again, and to get their A1c numbers down from, say, type 2 diabetic range down to pre-diabetic range down to normal. And in most cases, not all, but in most cases, that is possible. As long as the body is still able to produce insulin in the pancreas, then a lot of times we can still achieve that goal. So that's the first thing we're going to do. To do that, we use this analogy that we call the bucket analogy. And I won't teach on this in detail in this podcast because it would take a while to do it. But this teaching is included in the A1c recovery course that'll be coming out next week. So again, there's a waitlist link down beneath in the comments, but I'll just briefly explain it here. It's essentially, we use the bucket analogy to teach our clients and to help them understand what causes insulin resistance and what causes blood sugar regulation or blood sugars to rise into pre-diabetic territory and then ultimately up into type 2 diabetes territory and to stay there. And essentially, the reason we call it the bucket analogy is because if you think about it in terms of an actual physical bucket, a bucket is a container that you can put water in or you can put gravel in or soil in, and it only has a finite amount of space. And once you have filled up that space, there's nowhere else, there's no other place in that bucket, and the bucket will overflow. And our bodies operate essentially the same exact way when it comes to the space that we have to store away sugar and carbohydrate that we eat. So when we eat sugar and carbohydrate, and it doesn't matter what kind of carbohydrate it is. It doesn't matter if you're eating a Snickers bar or Skittles or a donut, or you're eating a whole food source of starch, which would be things like rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, things like that. The source doesn't so much matter because when your body digests it, it all ends up being glucose in the bloodstream for the most part. So when we eat these things, our body digests them and we release glucose into the bloodstream, and then our body tries to regulate having only a specific amount of blood sugar in the blood at any one given time. And therefore, our body will release insulin, which is the storage hormone in the body. That hormone will signal the cells in the muscles and in the liver to sort of open up their doors and to let in the glucose that is the excess amount of glucose that's in the blood. And it will store it away in the muscle tissue and in the liver tissue to get the blood sugar levels back down to where the body likes to see them. And the reason we use the bucket analogy is because just like a real bucket, the muscle tissue that you have in your body and the liver tissue that you have in your body has a finite amount of space. There's only so much glucose that we can store away in our body, in our muscle tissue, and in our liver tissue. And what ends up happening is that when we have human beings who are consuming, whether intentionally or unintentionally, just because they don't understand nutrition and portioning and things like that, they're consuming more carbohydrate on a day or on a day-to-day basis than what they are using and burning with their activity, than what they could possibly store away, than they need for day-to-day living. There's nowhere for all of that extra excess glucose or carbohydrate that they've consumed to go. And so it ends up just pooling up in the blood, causing high blood sugars. And then the body essentially has to work overtime, sending all that excess carbohydrate and sugar that we ate that has nowhere to go, sends that back to the liver. The liver then works overtime to convert all of that into fat, triglycerides, and then the body will store all that extra fat away in fat cells. And fat cells are different from the limited space that we have in our body, like muscle or in the liver, to store glucose, because we can just create almost an infinite number of fat cells. That's why we have people, on shows like My 600-Pound Life, who there's really, I don't think we've ever found the limit to how many fat cells a human body can create. It will just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right? So the problem we have, and this is what we start with, is educating our clients on understanding the problem is, okay, I'm consuming more carbohydrate than I could possibly store away in my body, and then I am burning on a daily basis with my activity and my exercise. And by understanding that through the bucket analogy, it's very easy to understand, okay, if we want to actually recover our blood sugar regulation back to a normal place, if we want to actually recover our blood sugar regulation back to a healthy place where our a1c numbers are coming back down from over 6.7 down into the, pre-diabetic range, we're down into ideally all the way back down into normal range under 5.7, then the goal is to fix these two issues, which is that we got to stop over consuming carbohydrate. We have to learn how do we consume the right amount of carbohydrate in a day that is within that capacity that we can store and that we can burn on a daily basis. That way our buckets aren't overflowing. And then there's also fun things that we can do by actually increasing the amount of carbohydrate that we need and burn on a daily basis through increasing our activity and our exercise. So point number one, or step number one in the A1C recovery protocol, is we start with education. We start with education around understanding the problem so that we can understand how to fix it. And we also then start really educating around nutrition in particular, but also around fitness and exercise so that we can actually start making sustainable lifestyle changes that affect the carbohydrate intake and the energy output of burning carbohydrate in a sustainable way. And from an education standpoint, what that usually means is just making sure that our clients and the people that we're working with understand what different foods have in them from a carbohydrate content perspective. Can they read labels? Are they able to quantify and understand in the course of a day, in the meals and in the snacks that they're eating, how much carbohydrate they're actually getting? Because the problem that we see that so many people run into is they can't control their carbohydrate intake because they don't actually have the education and the knowledge yet to be able to understand carbohydrates and to see the carbohydrate amounts in the foods that they're eating and to be able to portion and control it effectively. And if we can't quantify something, then we can't control it. And so we have to start with education. So that is part number one of the 4-step A1C recovery protocol. Then we get into step 2, which is where we actually start to fix these problems. So step number 2 is where we first start by fixing the carbohydrate intake problem, by fixing the overconsumption of carbohydrate in the day-to-day diet. And the goal here is to help a client be able to start seeing and quantifying and understanding the carbohydrate content of their food and start balancing it out so that on a daily basis, they're not consuming more carbohydrate than they are able to store away or burn through their exercise and their activity. And what this usually means is we have to do basically a complete re-education in the realm of nutrition and meal planning and what healthy meals and snack portions look like and what balanced meals and snacks look like inside and outside of the home. And we have a level 1 through level 4 sort of a system or hierarchy of eating that goes from very, very super simple all the way up to more fancy and complex meals and recipes that we teach clients, and also which is going to be included in the A1c recovery course that is going to be coming out next week. So we do that education, and then we just start working with the clients to make sure that on a daily basis, they're getting the right amount of calories and the right amount of protein and the right amount of carbohydrate for their body and what they need to be able to lose weight and to be within that capacity to where their bucket is not overflowing. Okay. And once we've achieved that by controlling the food intake, the carbohydrate intake aspect, then we can start moving on and focusing on the next piece, which is the activity. And that's number 3. So we've controlled the carbohydrate intake. We're no longer eating way more than we could possibly burn or store away. So we're not overflowing the top of the bucket. But imagine on the bucket, so to speak, that there's a spigot on the bottom, and we can crank that flow up on that spigot for how much sugar we're burning out with our daily activity. That's what we want to do next. So something I very, very commonly see when I interview new clients coming into Healthy and Whole, who are coming in with prediabetes or with full-blown type 2 diabetes diagnosis. Not everybody, but vast majority of the people that I'm interviewing have 2 issues. They're over-consuming carbohydrate and sugar, and they are not moving enough. Many of them are working. They work a desk job. They work a sedentary job. They get off of work and they're tired. They're run down, because when you have prediabetes or diabetes, your whole metabolic health systems and energy systems are all out of whack. So you feel fatigued. You don't feel very motivated energetically. And so they get off work and then they don't feel energized. Like they want to go and walk and do all the things and go and strength train and do all the things that we need to do. And so it's very common that I see folks who have, if we were to look at their daily step counts, they're oftentimes getting between 2,000 and 5,000 steps a day, sometimes even less, which is very, very inactive. And what that means is they're just not burning very many calories on a daily basis, and they're not doing any form of higher intensity exercise such as strength training or higher heart rate, zone 2, zone 4, zone 5 cardio, interval training, anything like that. They're not doing any exercise that preferentially targets and burns extra carbohydrate in the body. And so therefore, they have a very low tolerance and very low need for carbohydrate on a daily basis. So imagine, essentially, if we're talking in terms of a bucket, right? The bucket analogy representing how much our capacity is per day for how much carbohydrate we can eat and store away and burn without getting into blood sugar overflow. When you are not being very active, when you're not walking very much every day, you're not strength training, you're not exercising, you're not doing anything like that, your bucket is very, 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 very small. But when we start increasing our activity levels and we start getting up to, say, 8,000 to 10,000 steps per day, and we add in anywhere from 2 to 4 strength training workouts a week, now we've greatly increased the size of the bucket. We've greatly increased the capacity for how much carbohydrate we can burn on a day, that we are burning on a daily basis. And therefore, because we're burning more, we're always clearing out that room in our muscle tissue for more glucose to be stored. So we can eat more carbohydrate on a daily basis without running into issues. And plus, we're burning extra calories. Walking in itself is great because walking does 2 amazing things. Walking is by itself mainly a fat burning centric exercise, meaning when we walk, it's a low intensity, steady state activity that burns a little bit of carbohydrate and a little bit of fat, but it burns more fat than it does carbohydrate because it's not very high intensity. So that's great. Most of us who are trying to lose weight, we want to target fat loss, right? And so walking can be great for that. And it increases our metabolism. But it also, what I love about walking is that walking acts very similarly to insulin in the body, in that when we've had many clients who have a continuous glucose monitor on, and they'll eat lunch or they'll eat dinner and their sugars spike, but then they'll get up and they'll start walking. They'll go for a walk immediately after lunch, and that walk will blunt that spike and then start to bring their sugars back down faster than if they didn't go do that walk. And so that's one of the lessons that we teach all of our diabetic clients, is that, hey, walking and exercise is insulin, basically. And the more we increase your activity, the more we increase your exercise, we are increasing manually your insulin sensitivity, and we're increasing your capacity to handle carbohydrate in a healthy way. So we've started with education. We've educated around what the problem is through the bucket analogy. We have learned that there's an overconsumption issue with carbohydrate, and there's an under movement or under expenditure of energy happening with activity and exercise. And then we've gone to step 2, and we've actually educated on how to fix that. And we've implemented lifestyle changes with food intake, balancing out meals, getting into a calorie deficit, getting that carbohydrate intake down into a sustainable place where our body can regulate effectively. And we've now increased activity, shooting for a step goal of 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day, and 2 to 3 strength training workouts a week being a nice sustainable baseline. That's all great. If you actually just did those 3 things, when we do those 3 things, especially with our clients, we see results. We see weight loss. We're in a calorie deficit. We start to see blood sugars coming back down. We start to see a1c numbers improving. We start to see triglyceride numbers coming back down because the liver is not having to convert all of this extra glucose in the blood into fat. Weight loss starts to become a little bit easier. We start to feel more energetic. All sorts of great stuff starts to happen. But that's not the last step in the protocol. If we just stopped there, very few people would be able to do this sustainably, because we haven't actually made sure to build sustainability into the process yet. And that is number 4. Number 4 is actually the most critical point in the whole 4-step A1C recovery protocol, and that is we have to make it sustainable. We 100% have got to take the time to build out the components of sustainability in the lifestyle that is helping us to achieve these results of weight loss and achieve these results of getting our A1C and our blood sugar levels back down sustainably into a place that is healthy again. If we don't do the work to make this lifestyle into something that we enjoy and that we're going to be willing to do every day for the rest of our lives, then we've just wasted a bunch of time, because we're going to get burnout, we're going to get fatigued, and we're going to start reverting back to the exact same lifestyle habits that got us into trouble in the first place, right? And so I teach about this in detail in the A1C recovery course, but just to give you the highlights, there are basically 4 components of sustainability that, when we focus on building out all 4 of these components with our clients, we're able to get clients to self-assess and say, I feel like I'm at like a 90% on the sustainability of my day-to-day life, of the food I'm eating and the exercise I'm doing. And when we can get clients up into a self-assessed rating of like, I'm at 80, 90, sometimes 100% of how sustainable and enjoyable this feels, then even when life is crazy, even when they're going through weird, chaotic, seasons of their life, they're still sticking to it because they enjoy it. And that's the goal. We have to make that sustainable. So what are the 4 components of sustainability? The first component of sustainability is going to be enjoyment. And this probably mostly applies to your food, but it also does apply to your exercise as well. But mainly with food. It really just comes down to, if you don't enjoy the food that you are eating, the healthy food that you're eating on a daily basis, then you're not going to stick to it. And that is just, I cannot emphasize that enough. There's a certain threshold that we all have for how much we need to enjoy our food in order for us to choose that healthy food option over another option that tastes better, but is not very healthy for us. And so there's a whole spectrum here. A lot of people will always tell me, well, I like healthy food. I like salads. Well, yeah, until you have pizza sitting right next to the salad, and then you want the pizza instead of the salad. So we have to have options that are enjoyable enough that you'll actually choose those options, especially during times when you're stressed or you're emotional, instead of the unhealthier options. And so that means we have to really build out a menu of foods that are going to hit the mark for calories and carbohydrate content, so that we're not overflowing that bucket, so that we're able to see weight loss, but that are very high protein and very tasty. That's number one. We've got to enjoy it. And we have to find means of exercising, types of workouts, styles of workouts. Some people like CrossFit. Some people like body weight stuff at home, like Beachbody. Some people love to go to the gym and do more weight-based or machine-based workouts. Some people love to just do classes. It doesn't matter. It all can serve the same purpose, but it's important that you find things that you enjoy so that you will stick with them. That's component number one. Component number two is variety. We all have to have enough variety, especially in the food that we are eating. Otherwise, we get burnout, diet fatigue sets in, and then we start rebelling against our healthy food and going back to eating junk, right? So it's not just about the enjoyment. We have to have enough variety of options to get ahead of burnout, so we're not getting sick of eating the same things over and over and over again. And this is why in our program, Healthy and Whole, we actually force our clients through this process. We actually force them to build out and to try new things, and we ask them if we see they're eating the same 3 things and it's getting great results, that's cool, but they're eating the same 3 to 5 things over and over and over again, we're pushing them out of the nest to try new things, to find new recipes, to expand their palate, because we know that if we don't do that and don't get them to do that soon enough, in a certain amount of time, they're going to get burnt out, and then all of a sudden they'll be cheating and going rogue on their diet and not understanding why. They'll just say, I don't get it. I'm just not feeling very motivated. I'm just like, I'm messing up with my food a lot. And it's so easy to spot. We'll say, well, it's because you're trying to eat the same 3 to 5 things you've been eating for 6 weeks now. And you're so sick and tired of eating those things that you're just going rogue. So we got to have enough variety. And the same thing goes for your exercise. You don't want to get bored of your workout programs and things like that. You always want to be shaking that up every few weeks to make sure that you're staying like mentally engaged and stimulated by it as well. So we have enjoyment, we have variety. The third one that is super crucial is convenience. There has to be a level of convenience in what you're doing when it comes to your healthy food and your workouts. Otherwise, you're just not going to do it. So if your healthy meals take 45 minutes to make and they take 25 ingredients, and you have to get out a cookbook to make every single thing, and blah, 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 you're just going to do that for like a week. And then you're going to say, oh my gosh, I'm just going to DoorDash. I'm just going to throw a pizza in the oven. I'm just going to make a bowl of cereal. And you're going to go back to old habits. Same thing. If your workout program takes 2 hours out of your day to do it, unless you are someone who just loves the gym, you're probably not going to do that consistently. And even if you are someone who loves the gym, you're going to go through seasons of life where you simply don't have 2 hours a day to put into that. Right? So we have to have options that are healthy from a food standpoint, that are very, very time efficient, 15 minutes or less, few ingredients. I like recipes that have 10 ingredients or less, and that are healthy, have high protein, low carbohydrate. We have to have ultra convenient options, just stuff we can rip open and eat, or bowl of cereal options that are high protein, low carb, all that stuff, so that we can keep up with it in the busyness of life. Even when we're tired, even when we're sick, and even when we're injured, all of those things, even when we're getting punched in the gut emotionally, we've got to have options that we can still achieve when we just feel energetically like we don't have very much to give. Very important. And then lastly is flexibility. And by flexibility, what I mean is we've got to be able to go out to eat in restaurants. We've got to be able to go be social. We've got to be able to go on cruises and go on vacations. We've got to be able to go through the holiday season, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Halloween, parade season. all of these different things. And we have to understand how to do and integrate and balance all the normal human things that we do in such a way that allows us to either still achieve weight loss and blood sugar maintenance, and then blood sugar and weight maintenance in our maintenance range once we get to our goal weight. We have to be able to balance all that. And that's where a lot of things fall apart is people will find, okay, hey, I can do keto, I can do this, I can do that, and it helps me lose weight for a time. But then the holidays come, or then vacation season comes and they're going to the beach. And all that stuff starts to break down because they never learned how to actually navigate those situations, those circumstances, and still stay on track with their blood sugar regulation, with their carbohydrate intake, with their exercise routines, all of that. They never learned how to go and take a diet break and go on vacation for 7 days and eat whatever they wanted and then come back and get back on track. They never learned how to integrate alcohol and what that actually looks like and how to account for that in your day-to-day eating. And so all of these things are things that we have to learn along the way. Otherwise, it's inflexible, right? If you can't go on vacation and come back and know how to navigate that, if you can't go out to eat and not be stressed out in the restaurant, everything breaks down, right? So that's the high-level A1C recovery protocol that we follow with every single client. It's a super repeatable developmental process that we take, and it works virtually every time. I can't think of a client who has gone through this process and done these things and not had significant improvement in their body weight and in their blood sugar regulation, even type 1 diabetics. So we have one client who I talk about all the time. His name is Mike. He's a dear friend. I just did a podcast with him here a couple weeks ago. And same thing. He came in, he actually thought he was a type 2 diabetic when we started working together. And he had been a type 2 diabetic for better part of over 2 decades and was on insulin. We started working together. His body started to positively respond to what we were doing using this protocol. And he was improving his eating. He was getting more active. And we were working with him and his medical team to lower his insulin dosages because his body was needing less and less insulin. And we got him all the way down to 5.4 a1c, totally normal. And he asked the question of his doctor, hey, when can I just stop using insulin? And that's when they ran some tests and they figured out he was actually fully insulin dependent at that stage. And they reclassified him as a type 1 diabetic. But even as someone who is insulin dependent, able to have significant improvement in his weight and his blood sugar regulation by implementing these things and by following this development. He was educated on the problem, re-educated on nutrition. He fixed his carbohydrate intake. He optimized his activity, and he made it sustainable along the way. And that's why I want to share this. And that's why I'm taking the time to develop the A1C recovery course. And that's why I'm putting it out for free. I was originally developing the course for use just with our clients, just to further enrich the work we're already doing with clients. But I was like, there's so many people, millions of people out there who feel totally stuck and spinning their wheels with prediabetes and with type 2 diabetes especially. And this knowledge is too valuable to not just make it freely available. And that's why I made the decision a couple of days ago that, I'm just going to put the course out completely for free. And so again, I will try to, by the time I post this on whatever platforms I put this out on, have a link in the comment section or in the description for that you can use to sign up for the wait list, so that when I make the course available here in the next week or so, you'll get some sort of an email or a message that says, hey, go to this link and you can get access to the course. Thank you everyone for being here. If you find topics like this and podcast episodes like this highly valuable, I would ask you to like this and subscribe on whatever platform that you're on. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.